Your mother's desire for a friendly school is interesting, because John Cleese once said to you that your politeness will be your downfall.
Yes.
That was quite a big thing for you, was to be eagerness to please, to say yes,
Absolutely.
to be liked.
And I think people still detect it in me, and I think it's one of the sides of me that I seem to find impossible to get rid of. I can't help it. There is an eagerness to please, and I know it's not a particularly attractive quality. And I know it's not, and that being over-polite is not particularly attractive necessarily. I mean, it can be charming for a few moments, but even the word charming is pretty not a good word for an Englishman, is it? We'll let Latinos be charming if they went with a hint of gigolo. And
well, and in the 50s, charmer was a term of abuse, wasn't it? It was someone who was a con man.
Precisely. And it's not that I attempt to be charming, it's what I've become. I can't watch someone not saying thank you, or, and I can't not say it myself. I would have to, if I noticed I hadn't said it, I would have to come back in the room and say thank you. And it's feeble. It's it's like Shakespeare's view of dogs. It's kind of fawny and and it's not very. It's not something I'd like to have. After all, I don't dislike people who are not polite. I know quite a lot of people who are quite rude, and as long as they don't upset people, as long as they're not bullies, it's perfectly acceptable to be not brusque, but just to say what you think, and actually you then treasure it when they're warm to you, because they're mostly quite sort of distant, and then occasionally they'll say something kind, and you'll think, oh, you melt completely. But I couldn't be like that. I could not. I would see myself being, exhibiting hauteur of some kind, or being cold to someone, and I would just collapse.
And you once had to leave a lunch because your host was being rude to waiters.
Yes. I think Michael wouldn't mind me saying this, because
the theatre
he
producer
tells
Michael
the story.
Conrad, yeah.
Indeed. I remember once having occasion to go and have dinner with him in a restaurant that had just been opened by a restaurateur in Covent Garden, who was obviously very anxious to please Michael. And Michael was appallingly beastly to this man. And I actually put my knife and fork down and said, Michael, I've got to leave now. He said, why? I said, because you're being so rude and horrible to the waiters, and I can't actually stay in the room while you're being like this. And he found it the funniest thing, and he tells the story now. and probably the people who ran the restaurant knew Michael well enough to know that that was just his way. And my absurd, you might almost call it sort of bourgeois, need to hear the niceties of the thank yous and the pleases just struck him as absurd. And maybe they are. And I think it took me a long time to realize that when Cleese said to me that my politeness would be my downfall, he sort of meant it. He actually meant, you are too polite.